The Trojan horse, this ingenious device determined the fate of a whole civilization, Troy or Ilion, which is the subject of the great poem The Iliad by Homer. After the fall of Troy, the Greeks sack the city, get richer and richer, and they go back home with prisoners, slaves, treasures, and the satisfaction of having avenged the offense that Paris perpetrated by kidnapping, more surely seducing, Helen of Sparta, also known as Helen of Troy, considered the most beautiful woman on earth. So, Ulysses, or Odysseus, king of Ithaca, who was one of the commanders of the Greek army, also wants to go home. But it's not that easy for him. He had enemies among the gods, so he had to wander 10 more years in order to arrive to Ithaca. The Odyssey is a tale of perseverance and of faithfulness. Perseverance, adaptability, witty, and smartness by Odysseus. Faithfulness, perseverance, hope in Penelope, his wife, who was waiting for him, weaving by day and weaving by night, trying to keep all her suitors away by telling them that her husband was alive, that he was coming someday. So Odysseus has to go through many adventures. It would be long to go into details. Let's just remember a few of them. For example, in this monument in Ithaca, we have an Odysseus overcoming the fury of Poseidon, the god of the sea. We also have the island of Ithaca, which actually exists, although the times in which these events happen, around the 10th century BC, don't leave much evidence about the existence of his palace or his existence. Then, one of the adventures, of course, of fantastic or imaginary nature is the encounter with the Lestrygons, a race of giant cannibals who challenge the Greeks, that is, the troops commanded by Ulysses, and little by little the plot decreases the number of the sailors and soldiers. Ulysses at the end is left alone. And in addition to the Lestrygons, the Cyclops, probably better known. The Cyclops were a race that in many cases were children of Poseidon. They were semi-gods, and they lived in the island of Sicily, where Ulysses landed, and he had to live there, imprisoned by Polyphemus, the most important of the Cyclops, who ate his sailors one at a time while he was taking care of his sheep. So Polyphemus one day decides to sleep, and Ulysses, who was very ingenious, decided to trick him. He makes him drink a little bit too much. Polyphemus falls asleep, and then with a stick he pierces the eye of Polyphemus, his only eye, that was the characteristic of Cyclops, and starts to run towards his ship. And when Polyphemus asks what his name was, Ulysses says, "No one." So when the Cyclops started to scream, "No one has blinded me, no one has blinded me," the other Cyclops simply laughed. And that was the way in which Odysseus or Ulysses was able to escape. So this is just one of many adventures. Then he landed in the island of Circe, a magician. He spent a year there. After a while, he lands in the island of Calypso, the famous nymph who fell in love and retained him for 7 years, until by the intervention of God, the gods, he was able to sail back again to his island of Ithaca, not without descending to Hades and interviewing his father Laertes and figuring out the future of his kingdom. Finally, when he arrives 10 years later, after the end of the war, into Ithaca, he is able to get to his servants. His dog Argus dies of happiness just because of seeing him, and he simulates being a beggar who finally is able to challenge the 40 suitors that were trying to conquer his wife Penelope and taking the throne. He kills them one at a time, a very cruel slaughter that ends up in the repositioning, the return of Ulysses or Odysseus into the throne of Ithaca. This is in short the plot. But what does it show to us? It shows us, as I mentioned, a model of conduct, perseverance, wittiness, adaptability, and patience. These features are important to endure the obstacles that life presents us continuously. Ulysses never gives up. Penelope doesn't give up. Telemachus, their child, neither. So, the Odyssey is not so much about fantastic deeds, adventures, it's also about how to become better and how to overcome reality. That is, in short, one of the great lessons of Odyssey, the poem by Homer.